Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tech Talk with Mike and Ray. How's it going, Ray?
Hey, Mike.
We have a great show ahead of us today, don't we?
Yeah.
I'm really excited about this because this is all about, 80s tech.
Yeah.
And
sweet tech.
Where were we back in 83 that we thought we were all that? And we're really not. We really weren't. So today we are talking about the TRS 80. And I have no idea what a TRS 80 is.
Oh, it's so sweet.
But I'm looking at it and it looks
Wait
like...
till you hear it.
I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at it right now and it looks like... I have a cousin who is actually hearing impaired. She's deaf. So back in the 80s, you'd put the phone on this box.
Yeah.
And then it would send a series of signals through and she would type and you can talk to her on the phone. I know that's not what that is because it doesn't have the phone port on it.
Right.
What is a TRS 80?
Well, this is a TRS 80. Basically, this little computer introduced in 1983 is the state of the art back in the day. Now, this came out right after the IBM PC. So the PC is pretty much the model that we're using today.
So this is PC's competitor back in the 80s.
It was, yeah. And so to be fair, this is actually a couple of models after. And so the original TRS-80 came out, much earlier. And so by 83, this is a more refined
So
system.
That's the upgrade right there.
Yeah.
Show it to the camera. In case you don't know, we also video this podcast.
Right.
So you should check it out. But look at that thing.
Yeah. So this is pretty awesome. And back in the day, they would this was the business machine of the day.
That was the Mac.
Yeah.
Of 83.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it's a business machine.
Yes, it is.
So today, can I run my business on that?
On this?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. let's get into it. Let's I don't know. Let's find out. Let's see what it would take to run a business on the TRS-80.
Okay, let's do it.
30-year-old technology.
So what can this thing do?
Well, let me start by saying, as you can see, if you're on the video, you can see that this is sort of a laptop form factor, and this was called the Micro Executive Workstation. And that's the term they gave it. It obviously never caught on.
MEWS.
What they wanted this to be was the de facto computer that you took everywhere. You had it in the office. You took it out on the road, in the car, so you could be texting on it.
What is that? In the car.
Right.
Texting.
Everything. Yeah,
in
because
83.
Because you could write up your documents, you could write up your reports. I saw a little magazine article where a police station had adopted the Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 100 for all the police officers. So they wrote up all of their daily reports on
the TRS-80.
on the MEWS, the Micro Executive Workstation. So this thing was selling for about $1,400.
Really?
Today's dollars, that's like $3,500. So serious money. This was a serious business machine.
And now we laugh at it.
Yeah. So basically, this thing was built in Japan, not in China. This was built in Japan by a company called Kyocera for Tandy, and Tandy, obviously, as you know, owns Radio Shack, and so Radio Shack was selling this in their stores. They were selling it in magazines. You could buy it.
And this was the go-to machine.
Oh gosh,
because Radio Shack isn't as huge as they used to be.
Yeah, but they were going down the PC, the laptop road, along with the other components and things that they sold in their stores. This was pre-cell phone.
I never knew that.
Yeah, so you could go in and you could try all the Radio Shack models. Again, there was a few models before this, so this was more the perfected version.
Wow.
So, yeah, this was the machine.
Okay, so what does this bad boy have in it?
Okay. This has a CMOS processor, the 8085. Now, you might kind of remember if you followed the Intel line of microprocessors, they kind of started with the 8080. Actually, there was 8008 before that. There was the 4004 before that. But the 8080 was a big processor, a big deal.
Was that
in
like
the 70s?
Windows 95 version of? Actually, that's
No,
not
this
a
is
processor.
this is pre Windows 90. This was, but they really went big with the 8080. That's when Intel really took off in the 70s. And so then you had the 8085, and then you had the 8086. Okay. So that's probably starting to spark some neurons in your mind, because they had then after that the 8186. Do you remember that? The 8286, and we shortened it, called it the 286. The old computers, if you had a 286, yeah, you were awesome. This is way beyond this thing. Then you had the 386, then you had the 486, and then they couldn't use the 586 because of a patent infringement deal. They had to go to the Pentium. Remember the Pentium processor?
The Pentium processor. Yeah.
So they were selling those little Pentium processors like 2 inches square, and they were selling for like $2,000 just for the processor. Now you can buy them on eBay for $9.
That's crazy.
But this was 90s tech, so they had advanced, and then they obviously got into much more advanced processors, and so now we're into the quad core Xeon type processors and so on. That all came from this processor, which is the 8085, ran at 2.4 megahertz, not gigahertz. So that's 1,000 times less powerful than, let's say, your flip phone.
Right. Well, I'm sitting here looking. We're recording this on a Mac.
Yeah.
And so my processor, I have a 2.6 gig Intel processor.
Yeah. So this is 2.4 megahertz. So it's 1,000 times less.
That is crazy. Okay, and so the memory.
Yeah.
Okay, I have 8 gigs of memory on this thing.
Okay, so this had a maximum of 32K.
32K.
Right. So think of a text file. A typical text file on your computer might be 8, 16, 24, 32K. That's it. That's all this had.
So this thing's a dinosaur. But back then it was like, you need.
Oh, absolutely. Because how else are you going to write up your reports and stuff, right? You're going to go to your typewriter and write them up? No way. That's old tech.
Or paper.
Yeah, right.
Why would you use paper and pencil on this stuff?
Remember the electric, the IBM Selectric typewriters?
Was that like the typewriter? It looked kind of like this, but then you just hit enter and then just start typing for you? Is that what you're talking about?
Okay, you might be talking about a teletype. Okay?
I think that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, so that or some of the earlier word processors back before the computer, but this was contemporary with the typewriter. So the typewriter, the manual typewriter, you would strike each key about as hard as you could. Bam, bam, bam. You had, muscle strength in your fingers.
Right.
These girls that could type 90 words a minute would be just. You just don't want to get hit with one of those nails.
Yeah, that's my wife types like the wind.
Yeah.
She's crazy fast.
So IBM came out with this thing called the Selectric. That was an electric assist. So basically, you just touch the key and bam, that goes down.
It hit as hard as it needed to be hit.
Exactly. So these girls are typing, 100 words a minute on this thing, just flying.
Right.
Well, that was contemporary with this kind of technology back in the 70s and 80s. People were typing up their reports on these typewriters. So, you ask the question, can you run your business on a TRS-80 today? Your modern business, can you run it on a TRS-80? Well, all right. You're kind of talking about, typewriter type technology, just slightly above, because this has memory. This has 32K of memory. You could type up like 5 pages of a document
before you print it out.
Exactly. And then you could edit it. You could go character by character with these little arrow keys, go along and go left and right, up and down, and you could find the character that was wrong. Of course, there's no spell checker, but you could find it and see, that's wrong. Change that to a D. Yes, that is so
I didn't have to use whiteout.
Yeah, I remember whiteout, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what you could do. You could edit documents, and you could go line by line. You could read them over, get it all just right, and then you could click, print, and out it would come on what they called a parallel printer.
So what's a parallel printer?
Well,
is that the...
Okay, so that again might be...
is that too new?
Yeah, that's kind of the dot matrix type thing. A parallel printer would take all 80 characters, because you could get 80 characters on a line.
Okay.
It would take all 80 characters, and it would print them out. Now, you're right. They had the head that would move across, and would brrr, so it had like a little matrix, and print out line by line by line. So that was a parallel printer, and the reason they called it parallel is because it had all 8 wires for a byte in the port. So you look at the port in the back of this thing, it's got a big fat parallel port there.
Right, I remember those.
And so you would plug in this big fat cable, and it looked like a wide RS-232 cable, and it would send an entire byte at a time to the printer. 1 byte. It's like, yes, man, that's fast. That's 8 times faster than serial. That was awesome. So
that's crazy.
The parallel printer was fast. So this had a parallel printer port on it. This had a 300 baud modem. So the word baud...
Yeah, I've never heard the term baud before.
No one alive knows what the term baud means.
Except for Ray.
Yeah.
Ray knows what baud means.
So the word baud just means bits per second. Right?
Okay.
So this thing had a modem on it, and a modem let you communicate over phone wires. Okay? So you could pick up your phone instead of talking to Aunt Millie. You could send some beep, 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 beep messages across the phone, and it was actual audio. You could hear it if you listened in. It would just be beep, 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 300 bits per second. Okay, so think of internet speeds now, let's say 300 megabits per second that you might get at a commercial, office.
Right.
Even at home, you're probably getting 75, 100 megabits per second, right?
Right, yeah.
That basically is 1,000,000 times faster than this. Okay? So instead of 300 megabits per second, 300 million bits per second, it's 300 bits per second.
So you're waiting quite a while.
Yeah, so you could send basically text. So there was no internet. You didn't download pictures. You didn't download, MP4 files. You had no MP3. You didn't upload and download. There was no, concept of a megabyte file. You had text files, and those text files, could be sent.
So this is really like the first fax machine, really.
It's like a fax, yeah. It's like a fax because it had a facsimile of your document stored in memory, and then you could transmit it, and someone else on the other line could print it.
That's pretty crazy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So could you do that? If you had to limit yourself right now, you throw away your laptop, you throw away your phone, throw away all your computing devices, you have this.
And I get a MEWS.
What's that?
And I get a MEWS.
Yeah. So you type up anything you want to type. So you would have to be limited to snail mail. So you could print out your letters. So if you wanted to communicate with me and say, hey, Ray, come on over, let's do a podcast. Let's talk about standard time. What's standard time? Oh, that's something else.
Yeah.
You would do that with a letter. So you would type it up on here, print it out on your parallel printer, get your envelope out, lick it, put a stamp on it, send it to Ray.
Wait for a week, and then we'll record.
I'll do the same. I'll send you a letter back, and I'll tell you, I can meet at 2:00. You say, that doesn't work for me. So I have to send another letter back to Ray and say, that doesn't work for me.
Right.
I could do it at 1. So we're basically sending
today
letters back and forth, communicating with our TRS-80. That's how we do business. That's how they did business. Well, of course, they had telephone. You could pick up the telephone and talk.
Right.
Before telephone, that's how they did business.
Right.
You wrote out your letter, communicated by the mail.
Took forever.
And but if you want to go back to 1983, run your business on it, that's how you do it.
So you couldn't use the phone part anymore, even if that other person had one of those, because it's all digital now. So it probably couldn't pick up on on the signals, right?
No, nothing. Right, nothing modern. Way too fast. So 300 baud modems are. You can't even find them in an antique store anymore. They're gone.
Wow.
So unless you have one in a museum somewhere, they're gone.
Right.
No one alive even knows what they look like. But basically, they look a lot like you talked about. There's a little block, and it had a couple of cups. They were rubber cups.
Yeah.
You'd set your phone down on that.
Right. Yeah.
And they were sized to the typical AT&T phone, backlit phone you'd get. You plug it down onto there.
Ones.
Yeah. You plug it down on, and that created a rubber seal so that sound would, be communicated with no outside interruptions, and the beep 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 beep, all that would be transmitted over the phone, just like you were talking, but much faster. So that's how you communicated. But you could get on bulletin boards. They had things called bulletin boards. This was pre-internet, so you could get on bulletin boards like CompuServe. You could send mail. Did you know you could send electronic mail back in the 80s?
Back in the 80s.
Yeah, before internet.
Really?
So the way it worked is you would log into one of these little systems like MCI Mail. This is I think did Verizon buy MCI back in 2000, right?
Verizon bought MCI, yeah.
Right, yeah. So MCI, pre-internet, had mail servers that they called. And you could log into them, and you could type out a letter to someone and upload it. Beep, 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 beep. 10 minutes later, your letter goes up, and it sits in what they called an inbox. It was awesome. and you could come along later, and on your TRS-80, you could log in with the telco app on here, and you could log in, and you could go into your inbox and see if there was anything in there. So you didn't actually have to type out a letter and put a stamp on it and mail it. You actually did have that.
You had that option.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
that.
Now you're saying apps.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, the word app is fairly new with the invention of the tablets and the smartphone.
Right.
So how would this thing run an app? I'm sure it doesn't look the same. Or what is an app in this language?
See, we created that term. Us programmers created that back in the 70s and 80s. We were using that term because we were lazy. It really stands for the word application. And
okay.
What we would do is we would apply the computer to a certain task. We'd say, okay, we want the computer to do this thing. And let's say that thing is to, bring a program in from a cassette tape player.
I remember those.
If you're looking on the video, that is a cassette tape. No one alive, like I said, knows what that thing is.
I used to use one of those to pretend I was on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
And be like, okay,
record
that
yourself.
was so-and-so on Mike D. Rivera radio. Now here's so-and-so. And then I should pause.
Right. So this thing can record sound.
Okay.
And you could put programs onto this and bring them into the TRS-80. So that act of restoring a program off of tape, because this used cassette tape, was an app.
So the program was on the tape.
Yes. So the program was an app, and the program used to retrieve the program was an app. We called everything apps.
So all your apps were on tape.
Yes, everything was on tape.
Okay.
Now the TRS-80 does have a few built-in apps. They've got a little notepad app. So that, like I said, was where you could type a little letter, like a little 5-page letter.
Right.
You got your, 80 columns. So this thing has, actually it only has 40 characters across. So you don't get the full 80 characters.
Does it just keep running on the top?
They do. They kind of you can kind of scroll over, and so you get to see 40 of them at a time. And then a full 80 characters is what you'd type on a line. That's all you got on one line. And so there was no such thing as proportional fonts, where like the I character takes up less space than the capital M. No, you didn't have. Everything was fixed, like Courier fixed.
Right.
This was fixed size fonts. So you got to see 40 characters at a time, 8 lines on this thing. Of course, this does go into graphics mode where you have 240 by 64 pixels. So you could draw like little waveforms. So anything that draws something, retrieves or stores, all that stuff we called apps.
Okay.
And so that was our lazy way of saying we've written a program. We'd say, hey, I got a new app. Try it out. Pull it off tape.
I see here on the notes, it's the lunar landing app.
Oh, yeah.
So,
speaking of apps,
what's
the
that?
awesomest app was the Lunar Lander app. You could buy these. See, there was a whole, community. You could buy apps written by some guy in his basement. And he would be up there coding, writing machine code and basic code, and he would sell you these apps. Sometimes they were printed in magazines, and you'd just retype them into your TRS-80. Other times you could get the cassette tape for convenience, pull them down, and one of the greatest of all time was the Lunar Lander app. Because remember, back in 1969, they landed on the moon, and they had a computer.
Right. Well, some people think we landed on the moon, but we won't go into that.
Right. Yeah. So the story goes is this computer that they used, probably 1,000 times less powerful than the TRS-80, could download routines. And routines are not quite an app. They're like a part of an app, let's say. Okay. You want the computer to do this little function, calculate this trajectory, this landing sequence, this liftoff, whatever. They would download those routines into this computer, this huge box, a couple of foot square. Would download them into the computer on the lunar module, and start the routine running, and it would come back and it would compute values. You could take those values, plug them in, and you could land the lunar lander, right? So that's how they did it back in the day. Well, ever since then, every computer geek in the world has written a Lunar Lander app, and they get better and better.
Wow.
And back in the 70s and 80s, it was all the thing, man. You had to write a Lunar Lander app that would allow the user on his TRS-80 to land the lunar module. And so, come down too hot and you crash and burn. Come down too slow, you burn up all your fuel, and you're stranded on the moon. Okay.
So how do you know if you crash or not?
Oh,
Does it tell you crashed?
Yeah, it just beeps and says crashed. It's like, oh, okay, try again.
You're dead.
Game over, man. Game over. So, so Lunar Lander was an awesome app. This also has a calculator. You can type in numbers.
Well, that's cool.
So you could type in like 8 times 6 and get the results.
Wow. And now, you said it has a built-in clock, too, which means it has some internal memory in it.
Yeah, it has what they call a real-time clock. And basically, that keeps the date and the time. So you when you get your computer, you open it up, Christmas morning, you're all happy, and it's like, yes. And you fire it up, and the clock says 1900. It's like, oh, okay. First thing you want to do, how do I set the clock?
Right.
So you're looking through your instruction manual and all that, and they tell you got to write some code. So they get you right into writing code. And what you write is basic code. That stands for, it's an acronym, BASIC, basic. Basically stands for Beginners All-Purpose Symbolic Instruction Code, right? Wow. And Microsoft was really the big, in the 80s, this was one of Microsoft's big claim to fame, that they had put BASIC on just about every computer available, and everyone was supposed to learn it, right? Actually, people are still using Visual Basic today. A lot of programmers are writing Visual Basic. So Visual Basic, of course, came out many, many years later. Before that, people were writing basic code, and it was just, very simple, what I thought to be pretty cryptic stuff.
Yeah, code has never been ever been a strength of mine.
Yeah, and this stuff was pretty cryptic, and I always thought I never thought it was basic. I always thought it was pretty crazy stuff.
It's only basic to the person who invented it, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like, this is a no-brainer. Let's call it basic.
Yeah, so that's... I don't think Bill Gates invented it, although I have to go back in my history books to look at that. But Bill Gates was certainly the guy that just used it and put it on everything.
Put it on the map, huh?
Basic on this is copyright 1970 something Microsoft.
Oh, really?
So this comes, the basic that is on here, that's in ROM, read-only memory, is from Microsoft.
So that is Bill Gates right there.
Yeah, it is. And it's built right, burned right into the ROM, never goes away. It's on this computer. So you open up your computer Christmas morning and the clock says 1900, you got to figure out how to set the clock. Well, it's not, you don't open up a control panel and up comes this nice user interface,
Right.
dialog box pops up, you click, set the
You're
clock.
done.
No, you write code and you type in the year, the month, the day, then you got to type the hours, the minutes, and the seconds.
Wow.
And there's this code you write, and then you run the code, you execute the code. So you've just written an app. You've just written your first app Christmas morning.
Do you think they did that on purpose?
I wonder. Well, first of all, they didn't have non-volatile memory was not cheap. So you didn't have, SD cards. You didn't have that non-volatile type memory that you could pull a card out, wave it in the air, and that was
right.
Where your clock and they have little batteries, 10-year batteries on your onboard on the CPU board. They didn't motherboard. They didn't have that.
So you said this is run by AA?
These have AA batteries. Yes, you pull the AA batteries out, your clock goes away. You're back to 1900. I tried. Wow. This actually has the Y2K bug.
Oh, does it?
Remember the Y2K bug?
Yeah.
Remember 1999 rolled
my
around?
My grandma was so scared about Y2K.
The cars are going rusting in the roads because all the cars would quit. And
I would tell my grandma, "Hey, Grandma, Y2K," and she'd get so mad at me just for saying Y2K.
You're right.
Don't tell me that,
fearmonger. So this has the Y2K bug. You
Wow.
try to put in a date that is beyond 2000. It doesn't work. It thinks it's 1900.
Really?
So you try to put in, 2018, and it's 1918.
Wow.
So it does not have the concept of the year 2000. It has a 2-digit date. And so, back in 1983, that's no problem.
Right.
So you got a bit of a problem there. But the computer still runs. You can still type out your letters to me, telling me I can meet you 2 weeks from today at 1 o'clock.
1918.
Yeah. So, so those are the apps.
Okay, so tell me, and I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
So tell me about Standard Time. Standard Time powers Tech Talk.
Yes, right.
And so, like I said, I'm going somewhere with this. So tell me what Standard Time is.
Okay. And as it relates to, could you run your computer on a TRS-80?
That was my question.
Oh, right. I got ahead of you. I kind of knew where you were going with this, because Standard Time's basically a time tracking app, and it needs dates beyond 2000. You use it to, be your clients, all the time you log, the projects that you log, engineering, project management. These are all things we do today, all on computers. Standard Time does them all. And if you were to take this computer and try to do those kinds of high-powered, employee timesheets, approvals, time off, accruals,
Gantt charts.
No, it's not going to happen. So if you need Standard Time to run your business, consulting, engineering, manufacturing, whatever, millions of people do. Thousands, I should say, not millions.
Right.
You could not do it.
With
You'd
that
fail.
machine. Not even with the tape player.
No.
The tape player's not going to help. Just to play your old Led Zeppelin tapes, right?
Now you could, I suppose, you could write up a bunch of little apps, and see, they would be all like little parts of what standard time does. So you could calculate your billing rates. You could calculate your project triangles and your project scope, and
I guess you can draw a triangle on that thing, huh?
graphically, I mean, you got 240 by 64 pixels.
That's enough to draw.
That's huge. Open that up in Paintbrush, and you just see how big that is. Well, that's about an inch.
Big square. That's
Yeah,
awesome. So no, you can't run standard time on it, but it's a great piece of history.
Yeah.
It's an awesome conversation starter for sure.
Yeah, right. You put it on the coffee table. So, what is that?
Is that? It seriously reminds me of the hearing impaired. I forgot TRM or something like that.
Yeah.
Boxes.
Yeah, that term escapes me, but you're right. Hearing impaired could basically send text over the phone, and that was the purpose of that. And it was the same technology as the 300 baud modem. So basically a little keyboard, and they could type it over, and so it was like the teletype. You know what teletype is?
No.
Oh gosh, you've seen the movies where they have this big giant machine. It's like, I don't know, 2 feet wide, 3 feet wide, and it's on its own pedestal. And it's got a keyboard, and it's got a big, what they call a carriage, where the paper would go. And then the sound of these things is like, and they're typing out characters. And you've seen movies, old movies like war games, old movies, where they had them.
Okay.
And they would
I have to watch war games again.
Yeah, they would type out messages, tear them off, take them to the
Okay, I think I remember what those are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were using, prior to 300 baud, getting into some deep, dark history, you had 110 baud. And then below that, I think you had 50 baud. So you could send 50 characters. This was an upgrade. This is a real upgrade, 300 baud. But those old teletypes, I think they used 50 baud. And they would send 50 characters every single second. I mean, that's fast.
That is fast.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's awesome.
Over the phone line.
Thanks for sharing that with me, Ray. So how much, if I were to steal this from you after the show today, how much could I get for it on eBay?
Oh, eBay this? I didn't even look that up. We should look at it right now, but I don't know. I'm going to say, if I had to guess right now, I'm going to say that you could get this for $400.
$400. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know though. You'd have to go do your own research there.
When we stop the show, I'll say, "Hey Ray, look at that over there. There's a plane in the sky," and I'll slip it in my bag. And I
got the whole kit. I got the big box that came in, the original box.
Really?
I got the original owner's manual.
Wow.
I got some of the original instruction manuals. I got the schematics for this, the actual electronics, where Intel made it big with the 8085 and all their discrete logic that they had to support it. It's all on the motherboard. I got all that stuff, all the documentation. Put all that together, you might be up to $500. Who knows?
And that still works.
Yes, it does. Yes,
as far as
except for the Y2K bug.
It thinks it's
1919 or something.
That's great. Cool. Well, this has been a great show, Ray, and thanks for sharing that, because I've never even seen those. The earliest my computer days go back are the old tan Macs that I learned on in elementary school.
Right.
That's as far back as I go. And then maybe one of the word processing typewriters where you type everything out.
Right.
And then you hit go, and then the typewriter just goes.
Yes. Wang had them. Remember those? Or Brother had them.
Mine was a Brother.
Right. Yeah.
And my brother-in-law, he gave it to me for some high school stuff.
They had those little round daisy wheels, and it would spin the wheel and strike the character, and then move again, and it
like super fast
along the page. It's like, wow, that's awesome.
I remember typing like a 3-page paper.
Ooh.
And it's just like and it was done.
And then you have like a mistake and go, oh crap.
Yep,
Gotta
I
do
had
it
to
again.
redo it. Yep. And then if it power outage or whatever, because those didn't have any memory, you just lose everything.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah. Cool. Well,
Hey.
I think that's our show for today. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, 80s tech, sweet
80s
tech.
tech. And if you don't know what standard time is, it doesn't run on the MEWS, but it'll run on everything else, and you need to check it out. So standard time is stdtime.com. Check it out, and we're going to be posting more of these podcasts, so check back often. And thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.